I'm Linda Habak, and this is Build Beautiful. This isn't just a podcast about design. It's about the people behind the work and the truth behind the journey. The quiet pivots, the bold decisions, the failures no one sees, and the moments that change everything. Each episode, I sit down with architects, designers, developers, artists, and creative entrepreneurs, not to talk about success, but about what it takes to get there. The process, the doubt, the grit, the heart. If you believe in creating with meaning and living a life with intention, then you'll feel right at home here. Welcome to Build Beautiful, where design meets depth. Welcome back to Build Beautiful. Today's guest is someone whose work speaks in a quiet but deeply resonant voice. Eva-Marie Prineas is the founder of Studio Prineas, a female-led B Corp certified architecture practice based in Sydney, known for its commitment to sustainability, sensitivity to heritage, and the belief that architecture should elevate how we live, not just what we see. Eva-Marie's work often begins with a blank page, but with something already full of memory. A weathered brick wall, a Federation archway, a sun-drenched corridor. Her studio doesn't just design new spaces, they rediscover old ones. They honour what came before. In a world driven by more, faster, newer, Eva-Marie offers another lens, one where design is slower, more intentional, and where perhaps the most radical act we can take is to build less. In this conversation, we talk about why restraint is a design principle, how heritage isn't about replication, but reinterpretation, how sustainability is a mindset, not just a materials list, and how, at the heart of it all, is a deep respect for people, place, and purpose. Here's my conversation with Eva-Marie. Eva-Marie, I'm so excited. I think it's always interesting to go back to a person's origins and the original first part of their story. So I'm really interested to understand why architecture for you. Where did it all start? Where did that desire, interest come from?
There are probably a lot of influences that led me to architecture throughout my childhood. My mother was an art teacher. I've got vivid memories of us, my sister and I, just in the garden in one of Dad's old shirts painting. Like there was always big tubes of coloured paint and we were always outside spending time in the sun and being creative. My parents also spent a lot of time in the garden, so we used to build little things and make little ponds, and we were using our hands and really interested in that kind of play. And I grew up in the suburbs, so that was our sort of little world, this beautiful backyard. But then as well as that, we did a lot of travel. My parents both migrated to Australia when they were young. Dad came out from Greece when he was about 7. And then my mum also, she in fact was also from a Greek family, but she grew up in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
Like a lot of Greek people. And so, yeah, and we went on lots of overseas holidays, so we were able to understand other cultures. And having been a child living in suburban Sydney and then going overseas and seeing, you know, incredible historic buildings and also seeing how cities work in different places, I think it just opened my eyes to what was possible.
Did you always know in high school that you wanted to study architecture?
I think so. I think it was always there, and I wondered whether I'd be any good at it. And I was always trying to solve little planning problems, whether, you know, it was at someone's house or at home, or trying to design little buildings on the side. Like I was always sort of thinking about things like that because I was interested in creating other worlds, I suppose. I wasn't sure, but I think after the first few weeks of architecture school, I realised that I was in the right place. And it was just so fun and opened my eyes to another world and another way of thinking.
I love that. Speaking of another way of thinking, that's what I love about your practice, because I think how you approach architecture, it's really unique and it really speaks to you as a person. So you've now been in business for 20 years, running the business. What has it taught you about yourself? And now that you're 20 years in, do you look back and go, I could have given up at any point, or were you just always in it for the long haul?
I think I've always been in it for the long haul, But what has surprised me is the way the practice has grown and developed. Because I think in my head, I thought, I've got to start my own practice because if I want to keep practicing architecture and have a family and do all of these things are great now. You know,
The world has changed.
The world has changed.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah. And no one was interested in even, seemingly making it work.
No.
It was just not an acceptable way to practice. Now it's really, really different. So I think in my head, when I started my practice, I thought it would just always be me on my own, or me and maybe a student doing a couple of days a week or something. And the way the practice has developed and the way that we've been able to grow into a really great team and be able to mentor young graduates up and see them become registered, become associates and, become really great architects. I think that is a level of satisfaction that I never thought was, even on the table.
It's so good because it's paying it forward too. It's building these people up. And as an architect in particular, I think you're a custodian and, you're honouring place and buildings. And I think to be able to instill that vision in others from that very young sort of career stage is a gift. But it leads me to my next thing, which is one of the things you said recently on a panel that we were on together was the most important thing we can do is build less, which is very unusual for an architect. So can you talk me through that thinking and what inspires that idea?
Yeah. Look, I think as architects, we've always been trained, even from university, to think about the environment and think about practicing in a responsible way and a sustainable way. But I think over the last few years, we've realised that sustainability is not really possible and responsibility is something that we need to be more aware of. You can't just specify good materials that are, have low embodied carbon or make buildings that are cheaper to run. We need to do more. As an industry, the construction industry is pretty much equates to 40% of global greenhouse emissions. If we're going to come anywhere near this 2050 Paris Agreement, we need to do drastic things. And the solution is not necessarily a building. It might be a different solution. It's definitely got to be around building less. Yeah, that's the only way that we can really reduce our impact.
And then how do you communicate that to clients? Are you starting to weave that language in right from the get-go with your clients? And the second question to that is, do you ever get pushback from a client who just envisages that they want to, if they're renovating, they want to knock the whole back end of the house off, or they want to just completely demolish? Like, talk me through that client interaction and education.
Firstly, I would say that it's great to have opportunities like this because we can talk about it. And I think the more you talk about what you think, the more our clients are aware of what our pursuit is. So that makes it a lot easier because if you're putting the message out there, it's like any kind of marketing.
Yeah.
If you put out the right message, then you'll get the right clients.
Absolutely.
So that's the first part. And then the second part is, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes our recent montage, which I think you've seen little bits of.
Amazing project.
Thank you. And
So
look,
beautiful.
that project, it sort of, to me, epitomises this whole idea. But it was coupled with time constraints and budget constraints and the Design and Building Practitioners Act constraints, which make things take longer. So we were able to use those constraints to really get an outcome that was also incredibly environmentally responsible. So it was about the way we framed it. And I think that the outcome is something that the clients are really proud of, and it might not have been their initial thinking, but it ticked all their boxes and it also ticked all of ours.
I mean, that's like a unicorn, right? To have that situation where you're really happy with all of the outcomes and the client's really happy with all of the outcomes. But how did you approach the conversation with them, and did you get pushback, and how did you deal with it if you did?
In that case, because we did have budget and time constraints, we sort of lent on those.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the carbon footprint or the other things as much. That wasn't the main reason.
So you talk to them in the language that they understand.
That's right.
Which is budget and time.
Yeah, and I think you have to be,
commercial, right?
Well, yes. And as long as you're still meeting the brief.
Absolutely.
Then everyone's happy.
That's amazing. And through that process, did you educate them on the byproduct of the fact that this is going to tick a lot of boxes around sustainability?
Yeah, we did. We talked about it a bit, and I think they're really surprised at how well the project's been received. Really surprised.
Yeah, really. That's amazing.
And I think that the success of that project isn't just its aesthetic outcome.
Which is stunning.
Thank you.
Amazing.
But it is because we used our problem-solving skills in a way that was able to incorporate all of the existing components of that apartment and make it work. And I think that designers and architects we're great problem solvers.
Yes, absolutely.
So if anyone's going to be able to do something with some ugly marble and just transform it into something incredible, that's us. That's our skill, even more than picking something brand new.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's an even more honed skill, because it's easy to pick a beautiful slab of marble and throw it in to a newly decked out space, but it's much harder work to think about how to use existing pieces and then weave them into the new. So, and that is a skill that you and your team do so brilliantly well. So
thank you. It's such a fabulous design challenge, though.
Oh, it's so
to get a real ugly duckling and be able to say, no, we're going to work with it, not against it. And I remember years and years and years ago, one of the first projects we did, it was a little red brick thing in Pimble.
Oh, okay.
And and everyone was saying, you're going to render it, aren't you? And I was saying, no, why would you render brick? Brick requires no maintenance. It's one of the best materials you can build from. Why would you render it and paint it and then create all this work and unnecessary maintenance? Yeah, my answer was always, no, we're going to make the brick look good with everything else that we do.
Absolutely.
And we did.
And you did that on a project in Gladesville, actually.
Oh, yeah, very similar.
That's the first time I actually learnt about you and your practice was through that house, because I would drive past it all the time. And I was like, who is that architect? And I looked you up. So it's well before I ever met you. And then we met. It's like, oh my God, you're the architect that did that house.
Amazing.
And it's just a beautiful little red brick house that has been honoured with a lovely, humble extension. But it's so beautifully detailed and it's so simple. The simplicity is the beauty of it, actually. So
thank you.
I just, it really stays in my mind that most other people would have rendered it, added a whole box on it. Just
take away all the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Take away all the character. Yeah.
So you talk about cultural and emotional longevity, not just carbon. Can you give me an example of a project that you've designed for that kind of permanence, where the space was meant to age and evolve with its inhabitants?
What a beautiful question. In terms of cultural and emotional longevity, I think Fisherman's House is potentially a really good example of that one, because when we started working on that project, I think our clients were considering demolishing the cottage. Yeah, they were. And it was the last remaining cottage on that little peninsula. And everyone else had demolished them and built these enormous houses. But the issue was that the cottage was 9 metres below the street. So you had to actually access it down 100 stairs to get to it. And our clients were thinking about having children and they had aging parents, and it was this whole thing of how are we ever going to be able to make this work without putting a house at street level? And even the initial sketches that were done by our heritage consultant included just putting a 2-story house at street level. But the cottage just had so much incredible history, and it was culturally significant because it was the last one. And so we started looking at ways that we could potentially add something at the rear of the cottage to connect from the street and then connect it down to the cottage. And then we moved the program around because our clients wanted to live on the water where the cottage was. So we opened up the cottage and kept the memory of the rooms through the steel framing, which is expressed, and then also through the floor. So you can read the memory of that old cottage still within the current sort of container. And then at that time as well, we were really trying to work out how we could meaningfully connect with country and design with country. So we found some incredible landscapers who only work with plants indigenous to the area. So we went on this bushwalk with them at Berry Island and looked at, with the clients as well, and looked at all the plants that would have come from that same ecology. And then they were the plants that they designed for all the hanging gardens. And we get these incredible, you start seeing the fauna come back, whether it's like a paper wasp or a ringtail possum. Yeah, it's you can see that the ecology's been regenerated and it's working again. So I think went beyond just retaining the heritage of the building. There were so many emotional and cultural factors that make it a special place to be.
Yeah, it feels really layered and thought through, and there's so much depth there. When you're looking at heritage features, do you have guiding principles on what you choose to retain versus remove? How do you decide that? Or is it project by project, or is there a process that you go through?
I don't think there's a particular process. It's quite intuitive, I think, and it really depends on the house itself. And that's the beauty about all of these projects that we work on. Even though there's been a number of terraces and there's been a number of federation houses, they're all a little bit different. Even just looking for a brick that's going to tie in with an existing brick, it's different for every single project.
You recently went to Greece with your family. Can we talk about that experience for you? Because I know that was joyful, but also I think cemented some ideas and some depth to your practice, or it reinforced why you do certain things. So can you take me through that? I love that connection to place, but also to who you are as a person and culture and heritage.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're in Sydney, you sort of forget, but then immediately when you're back, there's this incredible feeling of belonging. And I think the language has a big part to play in that, to be able to have that language connection as well. When my father and his family left Greece just after the Second World War, they, like many families, like pretty much 90% of the island, they all left their houses there. They were just left empty, thinking that at some point they would come back. Yeah, so Dad's old house used to be, my grandparents' old house used to be, like, it was just a working farm, the subsistence farming. The houses were made of the local stone called pori. If you can imagine, all the rooms were these sort of domed rooms, and they have sort of 900 millimetre thick walls and really deep openings for the windows. So like these punctured openings. And my grandparents' house is like this series of rooms. One would be the kitchen that had a little fireplace, beautiful built-in stone seat where someone would sit next to the fire and tend to the fire. So it was all part of the sort of vernacular architecture. And then there'd be other rooms where they made the wine. And so there's like a well where they used to put the grapes. There's another room that has where they used to keep the carcasses of meat that would just be hanging from big hooks in the stone ceilings. And they'd collect figs during summer and dry them out. And then that would be where they'd be stored so that they'd have food for winter. So just great stories. But this house, large parts of it had fallen apart over time because no one was looking after it, and there'd been earthquakes. And I was actually in fifth year at university when I suddenly just thought, we've never been there. And I think because we'd always go to Greece over Christmas when we had big holidays, we'd never actually been to the island because it was so windy and just difficult to get to. And so I finally decided to go over and have a look at this house. And then I ended up doing my final year thesis as a conservation plan for it.
Did you?
Yeah, so I went over there and I
amazing.
measured it up, and then I came home and I did all the measured drawings and then did lots of research and took oral history from my grandmother and my great aunts and, recorded all of their sort of memories of this house. I'd worked as a student and as a graduate in heritage practice. So I had an idea of how these things were put together, but this was an incredibly personal piece of work.
Did you act on it? Did you actually renovate or reinstate the existing house?
To a degree.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing project, and it'll be something that my cousins and my children and their children will continue to work on. Like, it's an absolute dream to win lotto and just get it back working to an incredible farm that it was, because what an amazing place to go and stay at.
Absolutely.
But I think going back there, what it makes you realise is, that idea of this house coming from its place and all of these rocks that had just been completely, like, just piles of rocks were then rebuilt and these rooms were recreated. And it just reinforced to me the importance of place and keeping things simple as well.
Yeah. And the beauty of restraint.
Yes.
Which I think is innate in you in terms of how you think about how you approach architecture. It's about less rather than more.
Yeah. I think for me, it's not trend driven. It's very much about there's meaning behind it.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's about what I see is that you have a lot of values. Those values are in your life, but in your business too. And so that leads me to my next question, which is you're also a female-led B Corp certified business. So for those who don't know what B Corp certification is, can you talk to me about that and why you chose to become B Corp certified?
Yeah. Being a B Corporation means that we meet the highest standards of social and environmental impact as a business. And the great thing about B Corp is it doesn't shy away from making profit. Making profit is fine, making money is fine, but do it in a really responsible way and look after your people, look after your community, look after the environment. All of those things are like the pillars of B Corp. So when I found out about it, I remember I was just I've always got a million ideas and, we're always trying to do things here and there and do the right thing. And what if we try this, or what if we can help people this way? Or what if we do this in the practice? And I think when I found out about B Corp, I just thought, oh, that's kind of exactly how I want to run my business. It took a little while for us to kind of decide that we were going to do this. But once we did, we realised that it wasn't very difficult. It was really just a matter of taking the things that we were already doing and structuring them a little bit and creating policies, because we were doing all these things, but there was no sort of structure and it was not necessarily, we weren't accountable for what we were doing. And I think that a B Corp framework gives you accountability.
And how does it do that?
So that you have to recertify. So it's not a matter of just getting the badge and that's it. Yep. Okay. So every 3 years there's recertification, and it appears that every sort of 3 years it gets harder and harder to get certification. So you have to keep improving your score.
Oh, I see. So if you stay at the same level, you don't get recertified?
Not necessarily. It depends what you're doing.
Okay. So can you give me an example?
Look, I think, in a lot of ways it's to do with the way, like, we're quite lucky because we don't create products. I think companies that create product get hit a lot harder by this because we're not directly creating something, we're designing. But it is around the materials that we specify. But I suspect that we're going to start having to quantify the carbon footprint of our projects quite soon, which I think is something that I'd love to be able to do. And it's
Would that be a lot more work to do, or do you already sort of have a semi-process that you follow when you're specifying?
No, we don't. Not in that way. So we've got schedules and we've got certain materials that we know are better than others.
Okay.
And we try and choose those. But as I said, you can do all of that, but the best thing that you can do is build less.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's a really hard idea for most people to get their head around, actually. So it's like, okay, build less. But what does that mean in practical terms? Because we're also in a time right now where we're being asked by the government to build more because we have a need for that. So how do we straddle this idea of we need more housing but build less?
I think we need to be, and look, I don't have the answers. I wish I did.
No one does actually, because we're not building enough housing.
We're not building enough, but then we have a whole lot of empty office blocks. Can they be converted into apartment buildings? I know that there are architects approaching developers and showing them how it can be done, like, and does it stack up in terms of numbers. Maybe it's about being more strategic and thinking of ways that we can ensure that all these empty houses are actually being used. Like maybe, a couple that are, aging and living in their home with 5 bedrooms, and it's just the 2 of them just in case the grandchildren come over.
Yeah, on the one occasion.
I don't know. Maybe at some point someone should just say, look, you're going to pay more tax if you do that, or some sort of benefit if you just move into an apartment and let someone else have that house. I don't know. I don't have the solutions, but there's a lot of empty houses as well.
Yeah. And you're right, there's a huge ageing population at the moment. So it's a challenge. It's going to be an interesting few years ahead. And it doesn't help that construction costs are high. Whilst the government has improved approvals, it's not really converting yet.
But I think that as architects, we've got these problem-solving skills that we can actually think about these things and lobby governments and put these suggestions forward. And there's some really, really good thinkers in our profession. I think we can be part of that solution.
Exactly. And actually, that's an interesting point, because I think what I see, because we do very boutique and very small property development. We do some property development down south. We try and engage the architect quite early in our conversations, because we're looking at how to approach a site and how to best utilise the site to get the best outcome for the housing required for that area. And so actually it's a team effort. And so there needs to be more conversations from everyone trying to deliver this. So it's engaging architects right from the get-go, very early on in that conversation.
Yeah.
I want to talk about running a business. 20 years is an amazing achievement. What have you learnt about yourself in running a business for that long? And have you had to unlearn anything in order to step into a leadership role, like you're leading a team?
Yeah, look, I've learnt so many things. One of the biggest things I learnt, so I've had a business coach, someone that I see every month, and we talk about business and we go through the books and we talk about things. I think he always says things, because I think I'm the only architect that he has as a client.
So he's not an architect, not from the industry.
And that's what I love.
Yeah.
He will just often just say something that is so obvious, and I've been obsessing about how to solve this problem. And it's so obvious. And I just think, well, of course, why wasn't I doing it like that? Because I think as architects, we have very specific ways that we think business should happen. And it's archaic in a lot of ways.
Can you give me an example? I'm just curious about how you approach it, because business is hard. It's hard to run a business and make it profitable. There's a lot of competing agendas all the time.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, just little things.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh, that's so obvious.
But it's having fresh set of eyes that's not in it, right?
That's not in it. And sometimes it's really annoying because he doesn't understand how our industry works. Yes. And I think, that's not how it works. But then other times it's like this little gem. It might only be a really small problem that needs to be solved, but he has a completely fresh view of how it can be resolved. I think that, it's important to have people that are in the industry that understand it, but equally someone from the outside can look in, and that's when you realise that maybe, some of the things that we've been doing, it's not necessarily the right way to do things.
Or the most efficient or most profitable. Or
Exactly.
Yeah. What point in the business or in the journey did you say to yourself, I actually need guidance and I need a coach or a mentor?
When I could afford it. Yeah.
It's sad that we have to because how successful would businesses be if you had, I don't know if there's a government program where you could just build in mentorship and coaching from the beginning. I think the chance of success is so much greater when you have that person or, a system you can refer to, and you're not just trying to work out every detail yourself.
But I think that that's the catch is, especially in small business, and I know with architecture and probably interiors as well, you start out on your own with one little project and you don't think it's a business, you just think you're designing something.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, you suddenly realise, oh, I've employed people. This is a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When did that happen for you? What was that pivot point or the catalyst that took you from being, I'm just doing a project and I'm just designing something to now I have a business?
Well, it was when I was pregnant with my first son, because that's when I realised I've got all these projects that I'm not going to be able to work on for a while. Right. And some of them are under construction and some of them are going to need to be documented. And that's when I realised I can't just rely on a student here and there. I need to employ an architect. And at that point, that's when I thought, okay, this is real.
Yeah. How did you find letting go? Did you struggle with relinquishing control?
I found it really hard. Yeah. I used to turn up to the office with the baby and everyone would say, what are you doing here? But I felt really like, oh no, I need to be there. And then you realise that you do, but then you also don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it trust or was it that you're a control freak? What do you think was underlying all of that?
I think a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think a bit of everything. Just that control of like I must have had my practice for maybe 4 years. And it was so, like I was so emotionally involved in it and with all the clients as well. So I was scared to let it go. Like, what if this didn't happen quite the right way? What if this didn't happen? And like for such a long time, every time a new person joined our team, I'd feel the need to completely curate the way that they signed off their emails and then I realised, no, they have a personality. They're allowed to be different to me. And sometimes you just have to let things go.
Has that been the biggest lesson for you, do you think? Or what's been the biggest pain point over the years and you've just gone, I've learnt now to let that go?
Yeah, I think it is. You have to realise that you can't control absolutely everything. Put good systems in place, make sure that everything's being done properly and that all our clients are being looked after, that everything's been done in a professional way, but you can't control absolutely everything. And even if it was just me, I still couldn't control absolutely everything.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And looking back now on the 20 years, what would you say to yourself 20 years ago, now with hindsight? If you could give her advice.
Honestly, just be yourself.
Oh, I love that. But I feel every interaction I've had with you, you're just so authentically you. And just such a joy to be around all the time. Like I really, you're amazing. And I love how you've approached architecture. I feel like the architect is the person and the person is the architect. You're one in the same. And it really, you can see it through the work. That's what I see.
Thank you, Linda.
We're coming to the very sad end of our conversation because it's so good and I so many more questions as always. Are you excited about the future of architecture?
I am. I'm really excited and I want to see where it all goes with all the challenges that we're up against and all the new technology. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I think you have to be. You have to be excited.
Yeah, absolutely. In complete contrast, are you worried about anything?
Just the planet.
Absolutely. Have you thought much about AI and how that's going to impact? Have you integrated it? Will you have a policy around it?
We haven't integrated it yet. We're all sort of playing with it. But no, I would have to say that we are in very, very early stages of really understanding what it's capable of and how it's going to affect what we do.
Are you curious?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's just a time thing. Like any change, we just have to accept that things are going to change and then we need to make sure that we can move forward in like the most positive way possible.
If you could whisper one piece of advice to every architect just starting their practice, what would it be? One pearl of wisdom.
I think that what I would say for anyone starting out, to just draw by hand.
Oh, that's good advice.
Make sure that you never, ever stop drawing.
Do you still draw everything by hand? Do you start that way, like as in sketch
Always
design?
Start that way. And I'm so surprised when the young graduates sort of show me ideas that are drafted, and I just think a sketch would have conveyed that in a much more beautiful way. And also I was talking to some students recently with another architect. We were saying to them how really the sketching, like you can have AI, you can have like amazing 3D computer programs at your fingertips, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you're in the land and environment court and you're in a mediation and you've got the heritage person and the planner and your client, if you can sit there and do a really quick sketch at that second and get them over the line, that's going to make everything so much easier. Or if you're in a meeting with, I don't know, a group of people that need to make a decision quickly and you can explain that quickly through a hand sketch, that is so much more valuable than a whole bunch of words and then having to go back and, you know, draft it up. And I do not think that the value of sketching has been replaced.
I love that. And the reality is with all this technology around us that we actually need to hold on to these handcrafted human skills. Yeah.
Exactly.
So not just human connection, but that human ability coming from someone who's terrible at drawing, but very creative. But
just keep practicing, Linda.
I do. I look back the other day actually at some sketches I did when I was learning, because I studied design as an adult. I mean, I did it at school, but then came back to it. And I looked at my little 3D sketches and I'm like, actually, I'm not that bad.
You look back and you think, it's because you're not doing it now.
Exactly, because we're not doing it at all. I mean, I don't even really do the technical drawings anymore. I outsource that to other people in the team. I don't have the time to do it, which is sad because actually that's a lot of the problem solving happens there in that moment when you're trying to resolve a space and a detail. It's when you're doing it that you can resolve it. So our very last question, and it's our signature question that everyone gets asked, but what does build beautiful mean to you?
To me, build beautiful means building with consideration, building from place, and building with care and restraint.
It's perfect. I love it. Thank you, Eva-Marie. It was so good. You're amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Build Beautiful. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone who's building something meaningful. It matters more than you know. Follow us on Instagram at Build Beautiful Podcast. Until next time, keep creating with intention, and together we build beautiful.